Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
All right, awesome, awesome.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Sorry, I believe Andrea is coming.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
So I set up a little bit of agenda for today. Let's see if I can share it. Can you see attendee?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, feel free to sign yourself in the participant list. Shall we get started? What do you think? Ready for it past?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Yeah. So welcome everyone to the CDEvents working group. I added a couple of things on the agenda for today. I guess the first thing that I had in the agenda is a review of the 0.1.0 project, as I think we are getting quite close to the continuous delivery summit. And I mean, we had the goal, aim to do a release 0.1 in time for that. So basically, in terms of planning, I mean, the decision deadline would be October the 17th, but as soon as possible would be best. So that means that the cutoff date for technical work would be the 17th as well. And then we would have some days for any release preparation, meaning updating the versions from 0.1 draft to 0.1, preparing release announcements and updating the SDKs accordingly and those kind of things. The summit happens on the 25th. And yeah, I think it would be until the 21st, more or less, for release preparation, because there's then this weekend, the middle, and some travel time to Detroit, at least for me. But yeah, so I basically wanted to have a look at the project, see where we are, if there are things that we can descope from these or not, and so if we think we can do the release or not. Okay, I'll just continue as long as I don't hear any comment or anyone shouting stop. Yeah, I think for the I would skip over the admin part. I guess the release announcement is something that we can do in the last 4 days. No, but maybe we need to discuss the plan for the proper CDEvents governance. It's something that we would need to do. I guess have some governance.md in place. I think we do.
I intend to do more or less copy what we have in the CDEvents repo today. I believe it's there right now, right? Something, but then of course update it to some extent. But we will not have a proper governance in place for the project for Zeros1. I mean, setting up a technical committee and having everything in place when it comes to maintenance strategies or something like that for the projects and everything is not really in scope for this time frame. But at least we should have a start for it.
Okay. Okay. For the short intro video, I don't think this is something that we can do in time for the summit. I don't think I would have time for doing something like
You're
this.
probably right. It would have been beneficial to have it when we release it more officially, of course, but I totally see that that's certainly not really possible with the resources we have. We have been discussing a bit on improving the CDEvents.dev page with maybe some moving material on it. And this could then be made part of that instead, I guess, if we will get that from somewhere.
Yeah, but I think for now I would.
It will not be a requirement for Zeros1. I think that, I mean, we can release it anyway.
Okay. All right. This is highlight supported use cases on CDEvents.dev. I think this is, we discussed that we want to have, and I will work on it. I think this is still doable. We have documentation, document subscriber model for events. So this is about taking the functional diagram that we already have and kind of adapt it a bit and put it in the docs, in the primer. And I think that's also documentation, and I think I should be able to tackle this one as well.
I was thinking, Eric, is it so that you have some time to spare on this and you would feel comfortable working on, for example, this one?
Given that I also have the Python SDK in my lap, I need to be a little bit careful. But probably I can find time. But yeah, I will need to focus on the Python SDK, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Trace. I think there is some. So hello first. I think there is some background noise.
Okay. There is.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of core spec, we have expanded the bucket spec documentation, which is at the end these other 4 issues. So extend the change data model, extend the artifact data model, extend the service and environment data models, and the incident. So these 4. So I added these 4, the first 3 in the agenda for today. Hopefully we can get to it, or we can discuss them offline. It's basically what we implemented 5 kind of out of the spec for the demo that we have done with Eric in the Open Source Summit. So my proposal would be to take those changes in, and that would be the extent of what we need to do for 0.1. And for the incident group, my proposal would be to descope it for 0.1, because it's definitely not something we can do in time. And maybe we can work on it as part of the 0.2 roadmap with a bit more time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because incidents would sort of go hand in hand with the resolutions as well, right? So you would want to work on those two in parallel to some extent.
Yes, those two, exactly. Okay, yeah, we'll remove this from the milestone. And yeah, so the other three, we can hopefully make those three in time. And in terms of backward compatibility strategies, I think custom data is implemented. So the only thing left would be to expand a bit about this, to describe a bit more about what custom data is and what it is for in our primer document. So this is a documentation issue, and yeah, it's something that I can tackle in this time frame.
Wait, so real quick, how does custom data solve backwards or what's the idea for backwards compatibility in this custom data field?
Hi, Ben. Yeah, so we discussed previously about different approaches that we can have to allow services to carry data that they already have through CDEvents. We attempted to see if it was possible to use HTTP headers, but that approach did not really work because of how cloud events are defined. So it does not really, it's not really possible to have the entire original body directly into a CDEvent. And also there is a problem of the message type that would, I mean, as long as it's a CDEvent message type, it's not the original message type. So basically what we discussed and agreed in previous meeting is that if a producer, so if there is a case where there are existing events, and there are consumers that are not ready to process CDEvents, so the producer will have to send the existing events and the CDEvent until all the consumers are able to process the CDEvent. But and also we define custom data so that we allow like setting any data that is not part of the CDEvent spec in custom data, so that the receiver may be able to process that data from there.
Okay, cool. I thought this was backwards compatibility, like between like versions, because that's how you merge that version. But this is like backwards compatibility just in general. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the issue description is maybe not ideal. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so these abbreviations, it's a quite low prioritized requirement, but it would be good to have these abbreviations in our documentation to easier refer to different event types. I will try to do that, but it won't be on the top of my to-do list. The other one, on the other hand, there, I think we should at least have a relation or relate to that work that was done in the SIG interoperability. So we should have some kind of statement on in what way we are aligned with this or not, and if we have any plans or whatever to be more aligned. So I intend to write some statement about that there.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think we should have that. In terms of artifact ID, we discussed this, Emil, in Dublin, and I think the idea was we could include package URL as a recommended option for describing artifact IDs. So I plan to make a PR for that. I think this is still doable within the time frame of the next couple of, well,
Yeah, and I want to give
days.
like,
yeah.
oh, sorry, a heavy like +1 for this Perl spec. We actually talked about this internally at Apple, like when we were talking about CDEvents, and Perl spec did come up. So I am heavily in favor of this. And then out of curiosity, like how do we envision? So do we think so? Like, I guess, so let's say we have someone sending events. Are we expecting implementers to just unmarshal the scheme, you know, parse it? And if it fails, it's not the Perl spec? Or what's the kind of idea to, are we making this like the required format? Because it sounds like it's not. So I'm just kind of wondering like how people can go about, you know, reasoning what format this artifact ID is.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Ben. I guess we were not sure when we discussed this whether this would be like the best way forward. I mean, it looked like a good option, so that's why we thought maybe we'd make it as a recommended format, but not enforce it in the beginning. But we could also consider enforcing it, and that will allow consumers to rely on that. Of course, that would be the benefit.
I agree. I mean, we were probably a bit reluctant to state that this format is required. So we thought more, let's have it as a proof of concept for this 0.1 version and see if people seems to be satisfied with having this format, and then we could maybe set it as the required format when we come to the sharp 1.0 version or whatever later on. If there seems to be a consensus on that this is a good format to use for any type of artifact.
Cool.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's definitely good. You know, definitely seeing the feedback there, or you know, like what the community wants. My like thinking here is that I think it would be good to enforce just mostly because, you know, like having users being able to like, you know, already do something, or like implementers already expecting something versus like implementing it later is generally harder, you know, saying, oh, we now have this format. But, you know, like I said, that's not, you know, it's, you know, it's fine to, you know, introduce it later. But I want to make sure that, you know, we also have a, you know, like, I don't know if there's a GitHub issue around the Perl spec, because like, if we can get some like, you know, maybe some community, you know, discussion around that, because like, I'll definitely comment on it because I'm really in favor of this format. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'll just add it to this one.
Yeah.
I think we should maybe, I think we should maybe have some actually communication with the actual package URL people and see what their take on this is, if they see that this format is being used widely, and they also think that it's something that we should base our common event format on. That's one thing I think we should do before saying that this will actually be the required version for things. One option could, of course, be that we also include like a artifact ID type field or something to the spec, saying that, yeah, this artifact ID is of type Perl or other, to make it easier for the consumers. Because I totally agree, Ben, that if you're a consumer and it would be easier if you could expect a certain format on the artifact ID. So that's an option then, to have another field stating the format of it, if we cannot come to a consensus that we will only support the Perl format.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't know about introducing another field. I feel like, you know, just either enforcing one or just let it be anything is completely fine. But we just need to, I think when we're making the, you know, when we're deciding on the spec, we just need to be clear on what we expect that field to be, whether we expect it to be anything or this Perl spec. You know, because my issue is like, if you allow it to be, you know, like if you have this format type field, you know, like some people will have, you know, this other field format, other people will have this other, you know, format. And then that makes interoperability that much harder because now everyone has to implement this, you know, the spec, if you will, rather than just implementing this one way that could actually be built into the SDKs. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree. So maybe we should actually set it as a required format for 0.1. And if it is revealed that people that try to use the 0.1 spec cannot for some reason use this format or don't want to use it, they can instead provide their IDs through some custom data field if they don't feel comfortable using the Perl format. And then they can like write a foobar specification in the artifact ID field, maybe. So yeah, I'm actually fine with requiring this format for 0.1 if everyone else is as well.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Like I said, I love this. I love the spec. I think it's a really well thought out Perl spec, or you know, artifact ID or just IDs in general. So
Yeah, it works for me as well. I agree with that. Not having enforced format harms interoperability. So yeah, we'll need. But like you said, I mean, we'll need to implement it in the SDK. By worst case, we can have it in the spec for 0.1. Ensure till after 0.1 we can update the SDK accordingly if we don't make it in time for the SDK.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the input on this one. Right.
Yeah, so this is another such sort of say low priority thing, but we have the vocabulary document in the SIG interoperability repository again, where we have mentioned a lot of different CI/CD tools, and we should add the CDEvents terminology to that table as well, so we can see how it maps to other existing tools and things.
Okay, yeah, makes sense to me. I think it should be doable. All right. So in terms of SDK, I mean, we do have the Go SDK. I think one missing item is to align with the versions. Now that the versions PR is merged, so we need to align that in the Go SDK. Apart from that, I would consider this done, except for the, well, what we just discussed, I guess, the Perl format. For the Python SDK, I think the first version is merged now on main, and we created a number of issues. So thanks, Eric, for that. That we need to address at some point.
Yeah, and that will be my focus for the 17th. It's always dangerous to commit because the universe has a tendency to find new things for me to do. But right now, it looks like I will be able to spend some time on this. So it looks like I can be ready for 0.1.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Eric. So my feeling, I mean, is that, okay, maybe the area where we have discussed less is these additional fields that we need for DORA metrics. So those maybe are a bit stretched. I mean, we use them in the POC, but we haven't discussed them yet. So that's where I see maybe some risk. But other than that, I would say everything else is something that is doable in terms of 0.1. So I'm inclined towards saying that we can do the release 0.1 in time and announce it at the summit. But yeah, what does people think?
I'm thinking about this last week before releasing it. As you mentioned there, the administrative stuff should be done there with some documents, PR document and such things written. That seems a bit short if we don't prepare it already now in some way, I think. At least to me, I don't really have a clear picture on exactly what needs to be done during that week. That you mentioned in the agenda there.
Right.
Admin and release process.
Yeah, so I think from a spec point of view, we need to update wherever it says 0.1.0-draft to 0.1.0. Make a PR for that and make a release. So create a Git tag and create a release with some release notes. So that would be I think that's all from the spec point of view. From the SDKs, also we need to do the same. Update from draft. And I would make an initial release of the SDK as well. In terms of other work, I think we probably would be good to have some kind of blog or article. So I know Fatih is in contact with Jesse from the CDF, and is kind of holding off to prepare some media coverage for this. And I guess we would have to work with Jesse to prepare some content. So I would imagine some kind of blog post or article that we announce the release. Yeah, but I don't have full details about this last bit.
So how could we clarify there what needs to be done for that blog post and maybe other PR marketing stuff? You said Fatih is involved in it somehow already.
Yeah,
Or...
so when we announced the project, the CDEvent project, I think in that case, what happened is that Jesse kind of arranged a couple of interviews with different technical writers. So I presented CDEvent, what CDEvent is, and and a chat with these folks, and basically they wrote a couple of articles out of this. So this, I don't know if that's the plan for this announcement as well. So I can ask Fatih whether that would be the plan, or if it would be enough to have a blog post that we publish on the CDF blog.
If I remember from the launch, it took more than a week to get that through, I guess. didn't it?
Yes. So I mean, if we are in general agreement that this is doable, so kind of the technical side of it is doable, we can start working on this kind of preparation in parallel even this week. So that would give us more time and definitely would be beneficial.
Yeah, at least I think we should initiate it with Fatih and maybe or others, so we see that it's on track.
Another thing that I think Fatih mentioned is whether we need to update the white paper.
Right. Yeah, that should also be done by releasing this, and also of course the last week there before the summit is quite a busy week for at least some admin people, I guess, and maybe also people that are involved in presentations. So we shouldn't maybe expect full-time availability for these people.
Hey, gentlemen, I have to jump to another meeting. But once you get this kind of stuff in order, it'd be great for us to do a presentation to the TOC. So keep that in mind.
Yep.
Once you have this ready, I think we could. I think it's something that they should see.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks.
And I gotta bounce to Ortelius meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy. All right.
What about post-release activities? I mean, should we do some kind of, now it will be announced during the summit, but should we also try to plan for like presentations to other communities or I don't know, other foundations even now when we have a 0.1 version out, or should we wait with that? It's probably not a rush to do it directly the week after, but maybe we should start thinking about it, how we should announce it this broader than just putting it on the blog on the CDF website.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I've not thought too much about it yet, mostly because the remaining things, I guess they take most of my time. But yeah, that's a very valid point. And I can also check with Fatih about this, if there is any expectation or any recommendation, what is the best way to kind of benefit from the announcement at the at the CD Summit, KubeCon.
Yeah, of course, we could just sit back and wait for comments on tweets or LinkedIn messages or whatever on the release itself and wait for people to request presentations from us, but we could also be proactive ourselves and somehow go there wherever that would be.
What it would be probably useful if we don't do it before, to do some maybe interviews, whether it's video interviews or like regular interviews, so that we can have some article published on different media platforms. I think those are always useful. But yeah, we should probably think about make a good plan about what other communities we want to reach out to. If we want to maybe do presentation to different tool communities and present like what we have today and how it can be used and what are the benefits, and try to get some traction on getting CDEvents implemented.
Maybe before going to other communities, we should have the proof of concept or the demo updated for 0.1, which is currently not part of the release plan. But it would, of course, be valuable to have some showcase demo if we would go to such a presentation.
Yes, presentation to the DSC as well. Okay.
So should we, for example, focus on the communities that are part of the POC itself, like Tecton and Captain and maybe others, Spinnaker maybe? Or should we go external directly to, like, I don't know, Argo or other parts? Yeah.
Yeah, all good question. I guess we could start with those. I mean, we have some good connections already with Tecton, Captain, Jenkins, and the Spinnaker folks, so probably makes sense.
Yeah, I guess we can continue to brainstorm on this for a long time, but we shouldn't spend the time now in this meeting to do that maybe, so we can go on, I guess.
Okay. All right, so the next items on the agenda, or sorry, actually before we move on from this, do you think that we can decide now that we will make a 0.1 release, or would you prefer to wait another few days and see how it goes on some of these tasks?
No, I think we should say that it's fine. I mean, it's mostly you and I and Andrea who have tickets here, and I need the pressure to get my things going, so I would say yes.
Yeah, it's the same for me. Pressure is good from time to time.
Okay, that's great. Exciting.
Hooray. And good luck.
Okay, no, that's great. Yeah, no, that's really exciting. Pressure helps me as well, so it's good. We have a decision, and yeah, we'll do what we have to make it happen. So the other things, we still have 20 minutes. I don't know what we want to discuss first. So there are discussions about specific fields. I guess it can take some time to discuss them now. The third item that we had in the agenda is roadmap ideas. So at the CD Summit, I will do a lightning talk, which is a 5-minute presentation, and the topic is CDEvents roadmap. So, and I wanted to, get some input from everyone on the team about what we see at things that we would like to work on for the roadmap after 0.1. So I put some ideas in there, but yeah, I think it would be good to have a refined list that we agree upon before I do the lightning talk, so that we give a consistent message there. So I don't know, and then we have Oktoberfest contributions. So do you want to discuss the roadmap ideas or the other items first?
How are the other items related to 0.1? Are they mandatory 0.1 or is it?
Yeah, they're part of the 0.1 plan. So these are these extended change data model for the raw metrics and so forth. I mean, if we don't make them in time, I guess we can also remove them from the release. I would be happy to have them in, because I think they are valuable, at least for like basic use case. To have that data in, it's valuable, I think.
Since you are assigned to all those tickets and also to actually presenting the 0.2 roadmap, I think you can decide what's more urgent from your perspective to align on and discuss.
Okay. Yeah. Guess maybe we can start with the issues then. At least I would like to present it so that yeah, get an idea what this is about. I think Eric is pretty familiar, but so this is the first one is for the change event. So the change abandoned, change created, merged, reviewed, and updated. And the change that is in here is basically a new required field, which is an object of type repository or a reference of type repository, which has an ID and a source. So this is what it looks like in the Go SDK. And the idea is basically to be able to associate a change with a repository. So repository can be like owner / so the repository ID is basically can be the organization / the repository name, and the source can be the Git hosting system where the repository is hosted. To make an example. But yeah, so the main idea is that today the change events are basically they are basically empty. There's not much. There's no data model in there. So the only thing that we have is the change ID and the source, but there's no repository associated. So the only way to implement this today is to include the repository as part of the source.
Out of curiosity, what's the difference between repository created and change created? Is change like what is, yeah, what's the difference?
So a repository is actually when for instance, a GitHub repository is created. So create a new repository in Git, GitHub or in GitLab, and change is about is a name that we have picked for generic change. That would be what's called pull request in GitHub or merge request in GitLab or change set in Gerrit and so forth.
Okay, cool. So it's just like a blanket for PRs. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So the change proposed here is to add the repository as part of the data model in all those events, in all these events, in all the change events, change created, reviewed, merged, abandoned, and updated.
I'm a little bit reluctant to say that this is a very good suggestion. It again comes back to things we talked about before on this. If we should reference previously sent events or not. But I think we have for those cases where we actually, so to say, repeat the same information in consecutive events, we try to just repeat the information that is uniquely needed for such subjects, I guess. So isn't it so that the source change events here then they could include a reference to the repository, but with a as small as possible, still uniquely identifiable group of properties, not having all properties repeated from the repository created and changed and whatever updated events.
Yeah, indeed. That's what the reference is for. It's basically a combination of in the schema, combination of an ID and the source. And the source, the only purpose of the source is to say, I mean, this ID is unique within the source. So it's the kind of minimal set of information.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
keep
fine. I
unique.
wasn't. Yeah. Of course. No. Then it makes sense to me to have it there. Sure.
Okay. Cool. So the next one is for the artifact packaged. And this is adding a reference to the, again, it's a reference for the last change. So when we package an artifact, this would be a reference to the change ID and source of the last change that was included in this artifact. So this makes sense only if there is a kind of one-to-one association between a specific repository where a change is made and an artifact. So this works under the assumption that there is a one-to-one relationship, which is a limitation in the data model. And my proposal here would be to start with this, and then in 0.2, then we can have a proper discussion about like, what is it, the name, compositions. So, and how we want to see artifact produced by a combination of other artifacts, multiple repository, and so forth.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I'm just wondering why call it last change? It sounds like something that can change during time. Couldn't we just call it source change? The source change that was used when building this artifact? Or
yes, I guess it's, I mean, yeah.
How would you envision it? Or do you think that if there is a group of commits that has come in since last time another artifact was created for this repository, then we should only point to the last one?
This artifact is not specific, it's not a delta to any other artifact implicitly, or at least we don't have this concept yet in the spec. So we cannot say there are 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 commits more in this package compared to X, because there's no like other things to compare with. So the idea of the last change was to say, okay, the kind of the head in the Git repository, so that if you have this information from the artifact, you can find out through these, and then talking with a Git provider as well, whether a specific change was included in an artifact or not. So you cannot only find out, you cannot find IPOM events alone, and that's something that we discussed also in the talk. You need to have an interface into the software configuration management system that allows you to say, okay, this is the latest change ID that I have. Is this other change ID included? So does it come before? So this concept of precedence is not something we have encoded in CDEvents, at least not now. So the idea was to include this. I don't like the name last change either. So if there is any proposal for a different name, I'm happy with it. But yeah.
But it will be, as I mean, if you would look at that repository that you built the artifact from, and you look at it through a certain commit, I mean, you check out a certain commit on that repository, then it's that commit that identifies the change that was used for this artifact build.
Yeah, I think last change is a little misleading. I think that's what you're getting towards. And personally, I think a good name, I would rather just call it like change reference or just change ref, or source change, like Emil was saying. Last change is, yeah, it's a little ambiguous.
Yeah, I would actually vote for source change there. But do you think, Andrea, that doesn't really match? What would be the drawback of calling it source change? I didn't really catch that. I think that it's ambiguous in some way, or
no, I don't think it's particularly ambiguous. No, I don't think it's ambiguous. I just wanted to clarify that it's not a single change or that is included in this, because we don't have, it's just the kind of the reference to the top change in the repository when the build was made. But yeah, I don't like the name last change either, so I'm happy to replace it with source change or change ref.
I don't think that we include the term ref in any other parameters, even though they are references. I'm not sure we should start using the ref keyword there, but source change or change.
Source refers to kind of source repository. I wonder whether we could call it change. We should call it change.
But the reference actually, it references a change in CDEvents terms. It is a change that we reference, right?
Yes.
We decided to call it a change and not a source change, that event, the change created and change updated and those.
Yeah.
Instead of calling them source change created and source change updated. So maybe we should just call it change. So the change that was involved when it was decided to build this artifact somehow. And then it would be obvious probably for the people seeing that reference that, well, of course, there might be other previous changes also included since the last artifact was built, but this is the tip of the branch when it was built.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense to me. All right. So the other change that we did there was 1, 2, 3 artifact ID. Okay, so we have these service events, like service deployed, service rollback, and service upgraded. And the change here is to include the artifact ID. Of the artifact that is used for the service. Again, there is an assumption here that there is one artifact ID associated to this new service. But I think this is maybe an assumption that we could keep in future. If we have an aggregation, some kind of common concept of composition, we could always say that a number of artifacts are composed into one final service artifact that is then deployed, or I don't know.
Why not just make it a list, like instead of just a single string? Like that seems like, you know, if it's a list of line item, that's completely fine. But if we introduce many, or someone has many artifacts for a service, you know, they can add it, or, you know, that'd be representable.
Yes, we could use a list. I was just wondering whether yeah, I just wanted to keep it simple for the initial version, and not get into the weeds of discussing what is the best format, because it could be a list, or we could become a map, or something else. But if you think it's valuable to have it as a list right away, we could do that as well.
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, I was just suggesting it just because, like, I can definitely see services having more than one artifact. But
yeah.
I'm not opposed to keep, yeah, like, let's just keep it simple, like, yeah, as you were saying, and just keep it as a string for now.
Yeah, I think either way is fine with me. I mean, we discussed earlier that we might anyway add something that we might call a composition or something here as well later on, and then we will anyway not be totally backwards compatible probably to the next version of the protocol. So regardless of what we state here now, we might need to introduce a non-backwards compatible change to it. So I think we can keep it simple for now. That's fine for me.
Okay. All right, so I will then make 3 PRs for these 3 changes. So that would be the scope of what's basically changed for the demo, and that would be the scope that we would introduce then for addressing these 3 issues here. So I'll make these 3 PRs then, and plus the extra documentation PRs that are required. Yeah, cool. Thanks for the feedback on those. There are only 3 minutes left, but yeah, so if what I can do, I can add a issue for the roadmap, and I've seen at least one was added already. So maybe we can comment on the issue, and then until the next meeting, we can have a better idea of what we want to have in the roadmap and discuss it then next time.
Yeah. What about Oktoberfest? Is it ongoing, or what? It has started, right?
I think so. That's why I added it here. I actually got a contribution to the Python SDK, which was nice.
Wow.
Someone who knows more about GitHub Actions than I do created a pipeline for running the stuff that I put in the issue. Unfortunately, the tests don't pass, but I've been fixing that during the afternoon. So if I can get them to rebase the issue, that will be fine. But I found out that you cannot, or like the people in Oktoberfest, they cannot assign an issue to themselves, because we can only assign issues to people who are in the project. I'm not sure if that's a problem, but that's just something I discovered.
Okay.
It's really not something we need to spend time on now. This person seemed happy to work on the task anyway.
So
can they create pull requests?
Yeah, so you can assign it a PR.
Oh, this is a PR, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
So there is the issue that is the problem. So that would be
The last one, yeah.
Last one, right? So I think usually if someone comments on an issue, then it's possible later to assign them to that issue, but only after they commented on the issue.
Okay. Yeah, I really don't know enough about GitHub for that stuff, but yeah, that's good input.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
I will take a note on that.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
See everyone later. Have a good
See you.
one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.